Today's episode is brought to you by Bones Coffee Company. You can forget about boring coffee when you drink Bones Coffee. Not only do they offer a variety of flavors such as strawberry cheesecake and maple bacon, they are a family-owned company that puts great detail not only in their coffee, but in the artwork that comes on each individual bag. Bones Coffee has a coffee club that will deliver your favorite coffee to your door every month. If that wasn't enough, they also have some amazing swag to offer. Check out Bones Coffee Company today. I'll have my affiliate links in the show notes for you. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Sonova Cantrell. Today on the line, I have two of my favorite co-hosts. I have fellow crime writer and victims advocate, Cricket Andrews. How are you, Cricket?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. And I also have my favorite research assistant, Tammy. How are you, Tammy?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We've done a lot of talking about this case today between the three of us, and then I had to make a frantic phone call an hour before getting started because there was breaking news an hour before we went on show. So I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get all this in? So hello to everyone who's already signed on and commenting even before we go and get started. I appreciate that. I love to see it. Thank you, Marion and James and Venus. Thank you all for commenting so far. Today, we're going to be talking about this dreadful case of Scott Peterson. And I actually titled this, if you look at it, I titled this Publicity Stunt. The reason why I did that is because I really feel like there isn't enough information, enough evidence to really get this guy a new trial. And so we while we've been talking throughout this whole situation, we're like, how can they actually get a new trial for this guy? How can this actually happen? None of this makes sense. And then when you start looking into the LA Innocence Project, you find out that it is actually a new organization that is under the umbrella of the Innocence Network. It's not actually the Innocence Project. And it just started in August of 22. There's only been one other case. And basically, they have taken on the Scott Peterson case, and they think that they are going to get him a new trial. Unfortunately, I believe that they have chosen something that is going to cause them more harm than good. I do not believe that this is the case that you take on to actually bring good publicity for yourself. So we're going to be talking about that, and that's where we're going to start. I'm going to start over, like the basics. We're talking about the murder of Laci Peterson and her unborn child, Connor. She disappeared on December 24th of 2002. Now, her stepfather actually called into police, and he reported that his son-in-law called that his wife had not come home. His son-in-law supposedly had gone fishing that morning. And when he returned, she was not there. Now, you're going to listen to this 911 call, and I'm going to allow you guys to see this while we do this. And I want you to listen to this. The going story as of the time Scott Peterson went to trial was that he had gone fishing. Now, you're going to hear, when you listen to this call, you're going to hear the father-in-law call in and say, hey, my son-in-law just called and said that he got back from playing golf. So as of 30 minutes before the police were involved in this case, Scott was saying he was going to play golf. He had gone to play golf. And then all of a sudden, at the end of this, we're going to find out why he changed that. So first of all, let's do a screen share here. And we're going to go over here to the 911 call. Can you see this, girls?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
How can I help you?
Yes.
Can you guys hear it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure it's coming through for the sound. It's really quiet, so I apologize. See, I think it's turned up as loud as it'll go. All right.
My son-in-law called. He was playing golf this morning at 9:30. My daughter's been missing since this morning. She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park. The dog came home with just a leash on.
So the dog came back without your daughter?
Right.
Okay, what is your address, sister?
Well, I'm at,
Is that where she's
so it's over at the Loma Park is where she went for the walk. What is Scott Lake Address? I can't remember.
What's your cell phone number, sir, in case you get this?
Okay, we're just going to listen to a few seconds of that so you can get the idea. As of the time of that 911 call, Scott had told his father-in-law that he had gone golfing all morning and that he had come back and his 8-month pregnant wife had gone to walk their dog. And when he got back, the dog was back. The leash was still on the dog, but Laci was nowhere to be found. Now, we will find out later that he changes his story and says that it was too cold to go golfing. So instead, he chose to go out in the bay and go fishing because we all know that that is a warmer activity to do when it's cold and it's wintertime. So I'm being sarcastic, of course. If you don't understand sarcasm, I will explain it for you. But so he changes his story and says that he's going to, no, I actually didn't go golfing. I went fishing. Now, he went fishing in a metal flat bottom boat out in the ocean. Now, if you do that, you need to understand that that is a very odd boat to choose on rough water. Also, he said he was going to be fishing for sturgeon, and he took a little bitty fishing pole that you might catch perch on. He also took the wrong kind of lures, and the police would later find those fishing lures still in the package unopened. Now, he said at the that this was a last-minute decision. He decided it was too cold to go play golf, so he went fishing because we know that's a logical thing to do. Anyways, I can't even say that without grunting. But so he chose to do these things. In reality, 4 months later, we will find his wife and the unborn child will find their bodies washed up in the same area that he supposedly went boating. And of course, his defense team says that was just a coincidence. And so, or they also try to paint it out that he was framed. Now, we wanted to go over this case and see how could they possibly be getting a new trial for this man when there's so many inconsistencies in his story. Now, if you followed this case in 2002 when it started, you will find out that he also had a mistress on the side. Her name was Amber Frey. You'll find out that she was working with police once she found out that this man who had lied to her and told her that he was single was actually married and his wife had gone missing. She actually started working with police and started recording their phone calls. There were several incidences where he had called her and one time he calls her and says that he's watching the fireworks in Paris at the Eiffel Tower and it's so beautiful. He wishes she was there. In reality, police know for a fact that he was at his wife's vigil because they still hadn't found her body. So this is the kind of sadistic man we're dealing with here. You go through all of these different steps in the situation, and you will find out that he was found guilty because of these things. Now, during this trial, the defense team did their job, and they tried to bring up every little thing they could to defend this man and say, no, it could have been something else. Now, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through those things, everything that kind of makes you question his innocence, everything that kind of makes you determine that he's guilty. And we're going to talk about that because the way you get a new trial is you either have information that was suppressed, you have evidence that was suppressed, or you have evidence that was basically misused or misinterpreted, or you have new evidence. You don't ever go into and get a new trial just to rehash the same things. That's what the appeals process is for. Well, he's gone through his appeals process and he doesn't have any more of those. So he's got to try to fight and prove that this trial was a farce, and he's got to prove that there was misconduct. He's got to try to prove that this is wrong so he can start over and do this again. So that's what they're fighting for. Now, we're going to try to contend over the course of this video that all of this so-called new evidence that they are trying to bring up was actually brought up the first time around. So we're going into this saying, how are you getting a new trial for this man when you literally don't have any new evidence? And so this is where we're going through here. So girls, I want you to say something. Cricket, you start. I'm going to read some of these comments. I'm getting them so fast I can't catch up with them.
Now, this case, I mean, there's cases where you have the DNA, the so-called smoking gun.
Mhm.
But in cases like this, you don't need that DNA. There is so much circumstantial evidence against him that
Right.
there's no way
Right.
that it's going to get turned around.
Right.
Unless
Well,
somebody gets paid off.
right. Well, and this is something that we need to understand. He told law enforcement officers from the very beginning, and you can see his videos of his interrogations and things. He told law officers from the beginning that he had he had a great relationship with his wife. They had no marital difficulties. They had no problems. Everything was wonderful, smooth, and great. Well, we're talking the day before Christmas, and she was going to have everybody come over for a Christmas get together because she loved hosting parties. Well, she's 8 months pregnant. She's mopping floors. She's cooking this. She's doing that. You really think that you would allow your spouse to leave? You'd be like, help me. I got to get this house together. Instead, he goes and he leaves and he goes fishing / golfing, whichever one you want to believe, on that Christmas Eve morning. And so it finds it hard to believe that she would just willingly say I go when she probably needed help. Now we do know, well, one person says, does that mean she never walked the dog? Now we have different things come up that say maybe she did walk the dog. We're going to get into that. But what I want to start out with is the very first thing you need to understand about this case. If you've followed this case before, there's so much more information out there that you can find. We're not going to deep dive into the specifics of the case because you can find that elsewhere. I do want to go over some specific points and then talk to you about if you think Scott Peterson deserves a new trial or not. And I want to start a little bit of a poll, and I want you guys to tell me in the comments, do you think he deserves a new trial? Now, I want you to wait till we get a little closer to the end. Because I want you to listen to all the evidence that we have, and then you tell me if you think this man deserves a new trial, if you think if we need to waste more tax dollars on trials for this man. Because what people don't understand, they're like, well, the Innocence Project's paying for this, or he's paying for his own attorneys there. Well, he is still fighting the state of California. So the taxpayers in California are still paying for this man to have another day in court. How many times is the taxpayers going to have to pay for this man for us to prove again and again and again that he killed his wife? How many times is the taxpayers going to have to pay for that? And so at this point, I want you guys to listen to all the things that we have come up with. And then at the end, I want you to let me know, do you think he deserves this? Do you think this is a good thing for the taxpayers' dollars? And then, of course, I know we have a lot of victims' family members in my audience. I've got a lot of victims advocates that watch. And of course, Cricket's a victims advocate as well. Do you think it's fair to the victims' family members that they are going to put them through all of this heck again? And so this is where I want us to start this conversation. I'm going to start it off with what we call the CSI effect. The CSI effect is this. People think that since there is no major forensic evidence, since there's no major blood spatter, since you can't go through all of these things and find all of this dramatic science to back up this case, that the case couldn't be closed, that he can't possibly have done it because there's not all of these things. Well, what people don't understand is our true crime shows have done a little bit of a disservice to the audience. For one, they every show that they pick out, even if it's true, it's not a fictionalized TV show, it's actually a true show. What you need to understand is they cherry pick their cases. For every 12 episodes in a season of a true crime show, those 12 episodes might cover 12 cases. there's probably 1,000 other cases in those areas that they didn't pick because they don't tell as good of a story. Okay, so you need to understand, for one, the cases you're watching are cherry picked. For two, you need to understand that most cases don't have all of the evidence that you want. This is a puzzle that we're trying to put together. We're trying to see what it's supposed to look like, what this picture on this puzzle means. Unfortunately, when you are solving these cases in a real life scenario, you will never have all of the pieces. That is, you know, even to this day, I mean, Ted Bundy talked and was bragged about all the horrendous things he did. We still don't have all the pieces to those cases. So you will not have all of them. The concept is can we build a big enough picture that you can see what's going on in this puzzle? And that's what we're going to try to do. We are going to show you as many pieces of this puzzle as we can. And then it's up to you to realize, one, a case isn't solved in 30 days. Two, the FBI doesn't swoop in and fix everything like they do in FBI files. That series got on my nerves because I was like, where's the superheroes, FBIs in all of the cases that I'm working on? We can't even get them to look at it, you know? So in my case, I'm sitting here going, that one really gets on my nerves because I'm like, superhero FBI hasn't swooped in and solved the Durante Martin case. Has it? No. You know, they turn their nose up and turn their head at it. You know, so I'm sitting here going, the CSI effect, you're going to have to set that aside and realize we don't know exactly how Laci Peterson was killed. The reason being is her body was dumped in the water. It was dumped in the bay. Now, this is ocean water, salt water. And she was there, she was weighted down, and she was there for 4 months. Okay. Now there's lots of wildlife, a lot of marine life, all these things. The body deteriorated extremely. Okay. Down to the point that there wasn't much left of it. There was no head, there was no feet, there was only part of an arm. She basically a torso, no internal organs. It was a very dreadful sight. The thing with it is the baby was still in utero. So by the time the baby surfaced, the baby was in pretty decent shape. Okay. But here's what we want to understand. We don't know, since the head is missing, we can't say she was shot in the head with a gun. We can't say she blunt force trauma. We can't actually even say she was suffocated. We don't know. There wasn't enough left of her to tell. So you automatically, that puts a harder case for the prosecution. So they're going to have to build their case through little layers of circumstantial evidence. They're going to have to give you this piece and this piece and this piece, show you how they fit together, and hopefully you can come to a conclusion on what the whole puzzle looks like. Okay. And so that's the way we got. Don't let the CSI effect bother you in this case, because what's going to happen is you're going to say, well, we don't know what happened to her. And we really don't. We just know all of the things that was suspicious around her husband at this time. We know what he did. We know the lies he told. We know the extramarital affairs he had. We know that he told his girlfriend, Amber Frey, on November of 2002 that he was a widower. He first told her he had never been married. Then he says, no, I lied to you. I'm a widower, and this is the first Christmas that I'm going to have to be without my wife. Now, you need to understand that was a full month before his wife ever went missing. You know, so we have all of these strange things that add up to all of these puzzle pieces in and around Scott Peterson. And you have to put them together and look at it and say, okay, does this 1 + 1 = 2 here? And this is where we're going to have to deal with this case. Also, we want to bring up one of the things that the Innocence Project is trying to say. They're saying, well, our defense team never brought up the witnesses that said they saw Laci walking her dog after he left. Okay, there was a couple witnesses that came forward that said, hey, we think we saw Laci walking her dog in the subdivision there. We think we saw her walking her dog that morning. Okay, Well, they never brought them up. They never put them on the witness stand because they didn't find them credible. They couldn't validate what they saw. They weren't 100% sure. And come to find out, there was one lady that swore up and down she knew it must have been Laci because she was short, she was dark-headed, she was pregnant, and she thought she had a white shirt on. Well, come to find out, there was 4 other short, dark-headed women that had dogs in that subdivision at the same time walking. So there was no way for that woman to for sure say that that was Laci. So she don't know. Okay. And then I want to bring into something that I've been studying. I've been taking some courses about different behavioral psychology and criminal psychology. And what we need to understand is eyewitness testimony is very extremely dangerous. Okay. Most people, I want to do a quick poll for all of you guys that are watching. I love to see the comments come in. Thank you so much. I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. In the poll, in the comments, I want you to answer this real quick. What do you think? Do you think eyewitness testimony is reliable? On a scale of 1 to 10, do you think eyewitness testimony is reliable? If they're extremely confident, they know for sure what they saw, do you think they're reliable? Everybody put in the comments. Between 1 and 10, how reliable do you think they are? I want to see some numbers pop in. Now, Cricket, before I told you what I told you before, because I know Cricket, you and Tammy and I, we've all talked about this. But before I told you those statistics, what did you think? Do you think they're reliable?
No, you can't depend on them good enough in trials. I think it's a less, unless it's like, unless you have that where you have a good eye for detail and you pick up those things, you know, it's tough.
Yes. Magnum says eyewitness testimony is about a 1 at best. It's been proven very bad many times.
Yep.
Marion says 5. Tammy, what do you think? Or what did you think before you and I discussed it?
I think it's a misconception that people think that an eyewitness is really reliable. And after talking to you, I see where it's not always reliable as we think it is.
Right. Well, James Tate says about a 3. Okay, so here is what I want to tell you. This is I've been studying all these things, and I continue to study all the time. You guys know I'm kind of a maniac about studying. I've been taking this course, and it shows how eyewitness testimony is extremely unreliable. And it shows how the more confident a person is doesn't necessarily mean that they're more correct. A lot of times, the more confident they are, the less correct they are, because their confidence, their overconfidence, actually hinders what their memory recall. And so, what happens is when you are in a stressful situation, it depends on what you're focused on, and it also depends on your prior training. So we're talking about people that have no prior training before, and they try to put them in simulated situations to see how much they could remember and how much they could recall. They found at the very, very best, eyewitness testimony is only 36% accurate. That is the best it can possibly be. Now, if you start adding in extra factors, then you find out that it goes less and less and less. Now, what you need to understand is there's 4 different stages to your memories, okay? What you notice, what you store, how you recall it, and how long, basically how long a time it takes. Okay, so what you want to understand is there's 4 basic ways, 4 basic steps to either you make the memory, you have the activity or whatever it is, then you have to label it. So your mind has to label it and identify it and explain it, okay? So your mind says, okay, this means this. You give it a meaning. You flip it into storage, okay? And then you have to be able to recall that back. Now, there's a lot of places in there that can get messed up, so you've got your mind's filing cabinet up there. It can get mislabeled and put in the wrong drawer. It can get, so when you go to bring it back out, it's not quite accurate. Okay. So there's things where people will remember something, but they've crossed it with another memory. So they could swore it happened on Monday and it happened on Wednesday. They could have swore that this was a tall, dark-headed man when in reality it was a short, blonde guy. The reason why this happens is we also need to understand how you're recalling that information. Now, they know for when you put a set of perps in a lineup, depending on who you see first, can actually hinder you. So if you see, if they have a whole group of people that all look the same, so they all are tall, they're all dark-headed, they all have, brown eyes, they all about 6 foot, they're all dressed the same, that mixes up your recall. So you're thinking, okay, I know it was a tall, dark-headed. So you're looking for a tall, dark-headed, you've got your thought in your head, and then they all look the same. That actually mixes up your recall even worse. Now, you can also socially condition somebody. So when you go to interrogate somebody, if you go say, okay, here's our perps, your perp is in this, pick one out. Now, when you're going to do that, you need to let them know that the perp may or may not be in those photographs. Okay. The reason being is if they believe, you go into that thinking, okay, the guy I saw who did this is in this, you're going to find one that's the closest match. Okay. In reality, that may be the Pope himself, and he's never done anything wrong in his life, but you are going to look for someone that matches close enough to your thing. So you need to educate the person, saying the person you saw may or may not be in this. Okay. So when you start going through this whole process, you realize that there's so many ways that eyewitness testimonies go wrong. Then you also need to understand that if there is a visible weapon in the situation, unless you've been trained otherwise, so unless you've had some kind of training, your focus is going to be on that weapon. So it doesn't matter if it's insinuated, it doesn't seem to affect you, but if you see it, so if you see a gun or a knife or something, you're going to focus on that. You're going to forget what the guy's eye color is. Okay. And so someone's eyewitness testimony that says, hey, I seen this lady on the news and I think I saw her walking down the street, that makes that whole concept narrowed way down. So you're talking, you're starting at 36% accurate and everything else, it starts down stepping from there. So the fact that somebody says, I think I saw a pregnant woman walking down the street with her dog, and I think it was between 10 and 2 on that day. Okay, that's great. But then you come back and say, hey, I didn't say anything for a week until I seen her picture on the news. Okay, that kind of one, you've given a week's worth of time frame. All kinds of other things have gone on. Are you sure it was that day? Do you have a way to validate that it was that day? So they didn't bring these eyewitnesses forward for a very specific reason. They couldn't validate what these people thought they saw. And so they felt like if they brought them forward, they would cause more harm than good. So that's the reason why they weren't brought forward to begin with. Okay. So that's the first thing. We also need to know that there was a home robbery across the street from the Petersons' home. Now, Laci Peterson was missing as of Christmas Eve, so the 24th of December. Over the Christmas holiday, somehow the house across the street in kind of catty corner, that house got robbed. Okay. And so the theory was, okay, whoever robbed that house, maybe she was walking her dog. She upset the burglars. They threw her in the van and drove off with her. Okay. That was a working theory until the police tracked down the 2 men who actually robbed the house. They didn't find out that the house was robbed until the 29th, I believe it was. So they worked back and tried to figure out what happened because these people were gone. And when they came home, everything was ransacked. Well, they researched this. They found the guys that actually robbed the house. The guy said, we robbed the house on the 26th. Okay. We robbed the house on the 26th. Both men had solid alibis that checked out for the 24th when Laci was gone. So Now the Innocence Project is trying to bring up the fact, and they're trying to push in some of their new documentaries, that the police had narrowed their focus on Scott Peterson to the exclusion of all others. Well, that's not the case. They say, well, what about those home invaders? They didn't investigate that. Okay, let me ask you, what is the definition of investigation? Cricket, I'm going to ask you. Okay, they researched, they found the guys, they convicted the guys, they interrogated the guys, they got the guys' alibis, they double checked the guys' alibis. What else is there in an investigation besides finding the guys, convicting the guys, interrogating the guys, finding their alibis, double checking their alibis, finding out they didn't rob them until
They
2
did
days
their
later?
job.
What else do you need an investigation?
Exactly. They did their jobs.
To me, I'm sitting here going, that is the definition of investigation. They figured out who did it. They got the bad guys in jail, and the end, done. So now they're trying to push, saying, okay, he needs a new trial because they railroaded him. They're like, oh, they thought he was guilty from the beginning, and they never looked at anybody else. Well, we all know, and you guys on the show, you guys that are watching. No, because some of you guys' cases have been that way. You guys have been railroaded. Some of you guys know for a fact that the police didn't look at anything else. Well, in this case, we have verified evidence that the police did look at something. They did clear these people. The crime didn't happen for 2 days. So this is one incident where we are debunking this next one. Okay, so this next thing that they're going to try to bring up is the fact that, well, there was a home invasion. So there's another possibility Scott couldn't have done it. Okay, so here's the next thing. Here's one thing that I want to bring into the whole concept. He had a metal flat bottom boat. He took that out to waters in the bay. Now, anybody that's ever been to the ocean or been in a bay or even seen a TV show with a bay, whatever, it doesn't take much to figure out that that water is never calm because of the tides and the currents and then the wind currents and all of that. That water is choppy, hard water. That is not easy floating water. Now, anybody who's been in a flat bottom metal boat, which I have, we used to have one. We used to float down the river in it. That boat will beat you to death. It is not a comfortable boat to be in rough water. Now, you need the V on the bottom to cut through into the wave. Okay. So anybody that's been in a flat bottom boat knows that that's not the kind of boat you want to put out there. So if this man is actually wanting to go fishing and wanting to become a boater or a fisherman, he didn't get any information to say, okay, this is the wrong kind of boat. He wasn't going to buy a boat to become a boater. Otherwise, he would have asked some questions. Okay, is this the kind of boat I need to go here? Is this the kind of fishing pole I need to go here and do this and get this kind of fish? He didn't get information because he wasn't to become a boater. His goal was not to become a fisherman. His goal was to create an alibi and a way to get rid of a body. Okay. So to me, the fact that he had this flat bottom boat wasn't the right kind of boat. To bring it even further, you'll find out that he had made 4 to 5 homemade cement anchors. And you could see because it left rings where the cement was on the floor of his shop. He had this warehouse thing that was his shop. Okay. And there was 4 and possibly 5. Another one was kind of messed up, so they wasn't sure. So there's 4 to 5 anchors for a boat that I can pick up and carry. I have picked up and carried a flat bottom metal boat because you go down the river in a flat bottom boat. You can get to a spot that's too shallow and you'll drag bottom. So you have to get out and you carry the boat a few hundred yards. Then you get your butt back in it and you float some more. Okay. I have done that. So why did you need 5 anchors to hold down a boat that weighs less than 100 pounds? Okay. You don't. You need You need anchors to weigh down a body is what you need. Okay. Now you need to understand too that only one anchor was ever found, and there was no rope to tie it to anything. So what did he plan on doing? Going out in this really rough boat that without anything that he needed to actually accomplish the goal of fishing, and just throw him out in the ocean? I mean, what the heck was he going to do with 5 anchors? You know, especially when his boat didn't need that many anchors to hold it still. He was basically out there in a metal freaking bath toy. You know, that's not the place for that kind of boat. So anyways, this is where we're going. Girls, do you have anything else you want to say about the boat before I go on?
Well, the boat cracks me up too, as well as the fishing pool. I mean, I don't know how big sturgeon are, but I've heard they're big fish.
They are. Well, and he took out a little boat, a little fishing pole that you could probably catch a perch on.
Yeah.
Maybe a bass. You know, and you know, you need a decent sized boat too. You know,
yeah, because how you gonna? Yeah, it's just none of what he did makes any sense other than doing it for what he did it for.
Right.
Everything goes back to him and his stupidity.
Mm-hmm. Well, and see, this is the thing. He said that he came home from fishing. He came home from fishing and she was gone, and he called around, couldn't find anybody. But he said first he was fishing, so he came in and he took a shower and got cleaned up, and Laci still wasn't home. So
yeah, and he took the clothes that were in the washer out of the washer so he could wash the clothes that he was wearing, rather than just toss them in with the load and rewash, you know,
or throw them in the laundry basket.
Yes, so that again
here's
didn't
my
make any
thing.
sense.
He was more concerned with getting cleaned up than he was the fact that he found his wife. And he said when he got home, he noticed the dog was in the backyard with the leash still on it, but she wasn't home. So I'm sitting here going, is that not concerning to you? Now, we also need to bring into the fact that she had been told by her OBGYN not to exercise first thing in the morning. Okay. She had been having extreme dizzy spells and afraid and sick to her stomach and afraid she was going to pass out because she had been walking, but her stomach and everything was still upset. So she sounds like she was kind of like me. I had morning sickness for the entire time. I didn't just have it the first trimester, but she was also having extreme dizzy spells. So they were worried about her falling and possibly hitting her head or blacking out or anything like that. They were worried about her. So they said, don't go until you've had a good meal, until the afternoon, you know, you'll be feeling better by then, you know, then maybe you could go. But the doctor actually discouraged her from going at all. The doctor's like, I would rather you just not go. But she was worried about everything and she wanted to try to keep active. And you know, a lot of mothers do that, and that's understandable. Yeah. So the fact that she went right after he left, after the doctors told her not to go, is another thing.
I don't buy that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not good. So, you know, we've got all kinds of stuff in this case that makes you hate this guy because, for one, you find a picture where he went to a Christmas party with his girlfriend, and his wife was, you know, there with her feet up. And she didn't go. She stayed at home because she wasn't feeling well, you know, and so she didn't go anywhere. She was home, and he was off with his girlfriend, you know, a few days at a Christmas party, you know, so you get all these little things that make you emotional and make you hate this guy. And so they're trying to say, well, it's because they all demonized him because he cheated on his wife. He didn't actually kill her. Okay, well, if he didn't kill her, who did? And so this is where the defense team is trying to give you all of these random scenarios. I mean, good grief. I guess Santa Claus could come down the chimney and kill her and steal her and throw her in the ocean on his way back out. I mean, that's an option because it seems about as legitimate as everything else that this defense team is pulling out of the air. Because to me, I think in reality, if you don't have any kind of somewhat evidence to go with your theory, you can't just pull it out of the air, you know, and this is what they're doing. They're pulling this out of the air.
Yeah. Now, and he has answers for everything, like the $1,500 that he had, his brother's ID.
Tell them about that. So after everything started hitting the fan, after they found the bodies, they tracked him down, and he was actually on the highway running 90 miles an hour trying to get away. When they pulled him over and arrested him, he had his brother's driver's license. He had $15,000 cash, which, you know, in 2002, that was a whole lot more money than it is now. You might get 2 months worth of rent and a gallon of milk out of it now, but back then it was actually some cash. And then he had all this camping gear and all these different things. He told his dad before he left that he was going to pull an OJ, you know, and then he tries to tell everybody, no, I wasn't running. And I'm sitting here going, you had like 15 different kinds of pairs of shoes in case you had to hike through the woods. You had regular shoes, you had, you know, hiking boots, you had camping gear, you had, you know, ropes and pulleys and everything you need, you know, and I'm sitting here going, and you had $15,000 cash and your brother's driver's license. What the heck else are you doing? You know,
Exactly.
So he was running. Okay. So
it's a good thing that he got caught, because his camping skills are probably right up there with his fishing skills.
They probably caught him anyways. All right. So Tammy, I haven't heard much from you. What do you have to say?
Well, he already got a break because in 2020, the judge overturned the death penalty and changed it to life imprisonment without parole. So, you know, he already got a little bit of a break there.
Yeah, but I don't think he deserves a new trial.
No, I'm just saying.
This is he got the only break that I think he may have slightly deserved, and that was when they ruled that he should have been he should have got the death penalty. And so a little bit later they did overthrow that and say, well, that's not technically right. So they did give him they're trying to give him life in prison is what they're doing. But see, while they're fighting to try to get him resentenced, they're also trying to fight to get a brand new case. And if they get a brand new trial, then they are going to actually start all over again. And so he's got as much mercy as I think he should get legally. Now,
that's what I'm saying. If people want to argue about the evidence, then they did overturn that part.
Yeah. So that's all he shouldn't have anything else other than that. Now we're bringing up all of the things that the Innocence Project is trying to say in this case. Now the Innocence Project also said that there was a taped prison phone call. Okay. There was a taped prison phone call, not from anyone associated with this case. Okay. This was just a random inmate who talked to his brother who was outside of the prison system. He says, well, I know that so-and-so, which was one of the robbers, actually killed Laci Peterson. Okay. And the brother goes, are you crazy? This is a recorded line. Okay. End of conversation. Well, of course it was recorded, and the person that listened to it went ahead and called it in to the tip line in the Laci Peterson case. So they study all of this, and they don't find that guy is actually tied to the other guy whatsoever. And we're going right back to the robber who had an alibi for the day that Laci disappeared. And so we're supposed to believe that he decided to kidnap a woman off of the street who was walking a dog, who he was just going to kidnap her off of the street. And then 2 days later, he was going to go back and rob a place. So, I mean, that really makes about as much sense as anything else the defense team has brought out. But this was what we're supposed to believe. Well, come to find out that inmate had no ties even to the robber who was an inmate. So they had no ties. There was no way that wasn't legitimate. They dismissed it. But all of these things were brought up in the first trial. Every bit of this evidence was brought forward and debunked by the prosecution. So we're going back to telling you, where is the new stuff? if you're supposedly giving this man a new trial, you have to have new evidence, or you have to show gross misconduct, or you have to show that evidence was suppressed that wasn't supposed to be. You have to show something like that. There has to be something new. There is nothing new, and this is what we're going through. So the whole concept of the robbery next door, that has been completely debunked by the prosecution. It was brought up the first time, and it's a done deal. The whole concept of this inmate saying this, it's a done deal. Now I want to tell you guys, in case if you've never been in prison, or you've never dealt with anyone in prison, and you don't understand, you've probably never thought this way, and it was kind of shocking to me when I first got into this. Inmates in very rough prisons, and most prisons in general, they have a survival technique that is completely different. The society there is different. Now, in our case, you say, well, he must have known something or he wouldn't have said anything. That's not the way it works in prison. You survive by your grit, or you survive by your perceived power and connections. That's how you survive. And then you create a hierarchy of inmates based on that. Okay. Now, the problem is you are always getting jailhouse snitches. You're always getting people saying that they know somebody that they don't know. You're always getting people that's trying to give forward information. You always get people that are false confessing. You get people who are trying to insert themselves into very famous cases to get themselves more clout. The concept is their connection doesn't have to be legitimate, but it bolsters their hierarchy in this sordid criminal enterprise called our prison system. So you literally have to understand, this man probably said this just because he wanted to be tied into a famous case. Okay. And if he could say that he had information on the Laci Peterson case, then that gave him standing inside this criminal underworld inside our prison systems. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I've got so many comments over here. Magnum says, growing up on two rivers here and fishing from a flat bottom boat, that was one of the first things I thought about. This is nuts. Absolutely. I mean, anybody that's actually spent time in a metal flat bottom boat, they are freaking uncomfortable. They are not the most comfortable thing, and then to be on rough water, it doesn't make any sense. Let's see how much Marion Tate says, I would like to know how much time they have to prove their innocence when they are guilty. And that is something that I talked to, I think, Cricket about, or maybe I talked to Tammy. I don't know. I've talked to both of you several times. That is what I think is the most dangerous thing about this, Marion, and it's on my list. I just hadn't got to it yet. If they get this case and they flip it and do a new trial, they are setting a very dangerous precedence for every trial that comes from after, because this man has already had his trials. He's already had his appeals. There is no new evidence. If they go ahead and push through with this, they are telling everybody that is guilty or not guilty, they are saying you can get a new trial just because you fuss enough. Okay. And what happens is, how often are we supposed to retry and reprove that this man is guilty? How many times are we supposed to do this continuously for the next 50 years until he's dead, until everybody's dead and nobody cares anymore? I mean, how often are we supposed to do this? And so I highly, I caution those that are over this and that are making this decision. I caution them, because I'm saying you are setting a very dangerous precedence if you say this man can have a new trial when you haven't checked all the boxes. We don't have evidence that was suppressed. We have evidence that was actually given and debunked the first time around. We don't have new evidence. We don't have new witnesses. We don't have anything new. And you're going to do this. You're going to get an influx of people wanting to overthrow their case and start over again. And so, Marion, I agree. I think you've gone through your processes. There isn't anything new. And then I get really heated and angry because we just, as a team, we kind of gone over the Richard Glossip case in Oklahoma. There is no evidence, zero evidence against Richard Glossop. And yet he's on death row and has been served his last meal 3 times and barely gets a stay of execution. And they're like, well, there's no new evidence, so forget it. We're going to kill him whether he's innocent or not. And yet you've got California who says you've got a ton of circumstantial evidence, but we're going to let you do it again. Let's round 2. Here we go. So I'm sitting here going, there needs to be some sort of policing organization to standardize it across the board.
Yeah.
It should be the same in Oklahoma as it is in Tennessee, as it is in Texas, as it is in California. It should be the same. But it's not. In Oklahoma, if they decide they're going to kill you, whether you're innocent or not, they're going to kill you. That's just it. They're like, too bad. So sad. But then in California, they're like, oh, well, you get enough money, you kick enough fuss, we don't care what happened to the victim. We're going to do it again. And this is where I feel like they better be careful, be very cautious of this. Cricket, Tammy, say something. Somebody say something.
Yeah, that thing
with
cases like this, like they should have a cutoff. Like you did your appeals, you did this, okay, we're done.
Right. And we have that. That is in our judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it's set up. And
yet some cases are allowed to go beyond that.
On and on. Tammy, I haven't heard much from you.
Well, the Los Angeles Innocence Project.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about them next.
Are they even going along with their mission statement?
No.
The mission statement says that you have to have new forensic evidence. You have to have new evidence, and if you read their mission statement, it doesn't seem to fall under the category.
Yeah. Well, and that's who I was going to talk about next. The LA Innocence Project is the one that's spearheading this campaign. Okay. They are spearheading this campaign saying that Scott was railroaded, that everybody just hated him because he was cheating on his pregnant wife. And so they accused him of something he didn't do. It didn't matter how many lies he told. It didn't matter that the evidence all stacks up against him. It doesn't matter that nothing else adds up and there is no other scenario that makes sense. It doesn't matter. And this is where we need to understand too. One thing I'll get to before I do the Innocence Project. There's a difference between a shadow of a doubt and reasonable doubt. And that's something that you also need to understand. When you're in a murder trial and you're on the jury, they ask you to convict this person beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, that doesn't mean beyond a shadow of a doubt. That means that you there might be some doubt, but 1 + 1 = 2, and we have enough of these puzzle pieces together that you can see and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So in all reality, those robbers didn't come and kill Laci 2 days before robbing the place. They didn't decide to, okay, now they also tried this theory of, well, maybe they held Laci for a while and then she became big news, so then they decided to dump her where her husband was to frame him. Well, up until a certain news broadcast, up until that specific time, it wasn't public knowledge what her husband had done that morning. Okay, so up until a certain point, they wouldn't have known that. So they just automatically randomly picked it out of the air. Oh, I bet that's where Scott went that morning. We seen him leave. So I bet that's where he went. So we're just going to take her there and hope for the best. Okay. So all of that is beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay. It's not reasonable for that to happen. It's not reasonable for Santa Claus to come in and kidnap a pregnant woman and drop her off in the ocean. Okay. It's not reasonable. So we can take that out of the scenario. Now, if you're convicting on a shadow of a doubt, which is way you really need to do when you're talking about the death penalty, there's a difference between a shadow and a reasonable doubt. And so when you're running through those things, you need to understand Scott Peterson was convicted within a reasonable doubt. We don't know exactly how she was killed. We don't know the exact moment she was killed. We do know all of these other things add up and point towards the most logical conclusion is Scott Peterson. So that qualifies within the whole framework of reasonable doubt. And so that's where we need to understand. People are saying, well, you don't know this, so you can't convict. That's not the way it works. You have reasonable doubt, which gives you a little bit of leeway. Okay. So moving on into the LA Innocence Project. Now, when you say the Innocence Project, you think of the Innocence Project that's famous, that's solved all these cases, that's helped so many people get out of prison that weren't supposed to be there. You think of this big organization. The LA Innocence Project is not the same thing. The LA Innocence Project was actually started by a handful of attorneys on the donation of a person that had been wrongfully committed, wrongfully accused. He had gotten a payout, because you get recompensed, supposedly, they give you a cash payout if you've been put in prison wrongfully for 20 years, which we know what's the point. I'm like, good grief, cash. I'd rather have my 20 years, but whatever the case, you get a cash payout. So there was a donation of that cash payout to start a new LA Innocence Project. So you need to understand, not that means they're corrupt or they're wrong or they're anything. You just need to realize that this is a new organization started in August of 2022, and it is a small thing, and they've had one case. So this isn't the major Innocence Projects that we have all heard about and have seen such amazing work from. This is a new crew, a new group of people that fall under the umbrella of the Innocence Network. So you have, I was telling one of you guys on the phone, I'm a writer. Okay, great. You have the Writers Association, kind of nationwide. You have the Missouri Writers Guild. Then you have the Springfield Writers Guild. And then you have me. I'm not associated with any of them, but I'm a writer. Okay. That doesn't mean I'm a part of the guild, the American Writers Association. You know what I'm saying? I am just a writer. So that's kind of the way it works along the lines with the Innocence Project. You've got the Innocence Network, and then you have all these other organizations that fall under that umbrella organization. So that's not to say they're not legitimate or anything like that. That's just to let you know these are not the same thing. Okay. Also, you want to understand that when it comes to this, what is the Innocence Project gaining from this case? If they cannot prove anything, what are they doing? Well, for one, right now, they're fighting to try to get a new trial. They're trying to get this done. Now, one judge has already struck it down, and they're still fighting. Now, she said she looked over everything that they had, all of these reasons that we've already debunked in less than an hour. And she says, you have no new evidence. So what they've done in the remains that was found with Laci Peterson's bodies, there was partial clothing and some duct tape. Now, this is something you need to understand. There was also some tape around the child that was born, that was came to the surface with her. It was loosely kind of jumbled up around the child. It was big. It looked like something ocean debris that he had collected on the way to the surface. So it wasn't actually attached to him. It was something. So what we need to understand is there was supposedly a piece of tape on her pants. Now, can we say it was definitively what she was wrapped in when she was thrown in? We don't know for sure. They think so. So what they're planning on doing is trying to get a DNA sample off of that piece of duct tape that's been in the ocean for 4 months. Now, Cricket found something. Cricket, do you want to read it, or do you want me to?
You can.
Okay. This says that freshwater, swamp water, and salt water all showed large losses of DNA after a 72-hour period. The DNA binds under low salt conditions, and contaminating proteins and RNA can then be washed away with higher salt solutions. So this is telling us after 72 hours, the DNA is extremely deteriorated and it starts washing away. So I don't believe they're going to find any DNA on that tape unless it happens to be some investigators who tried to get it and tried to touch it, so I doubt they're going to find any DNA from that. But that's one thing. They're like, well, you have to let us try to find DNA on this duct tape. And if we find somebody other than Scott Peterson, then you have to give us a new trial. So they're trying to force the judge's hand by coming up with new evidence. Okay, so that's what they're doing. Also, they've gone back. In that general vicinity, there was a van that had been a burned out van that was left in some general vicinity nearby Laci Peterson's subdivision. Now, for one, they don't know that the robbers actually used a van. Okay. They can't prove that that van actually belonged to the two burglars. Okay. But they said in the back of the van, there was a mattress and some blood spatter. Even though this thing was burned out, they still seen remnants of a mattress and blood spatter, which I find highly suspect, because if you're going to burn out a van, a mattress is highly flammable. Why is it still there with blood spatter? Whatever. I'm not going to get into it. So they're demanding that the judge also does a DNA test on the blood found in that burned out van, which really, I'm thinking you might as well come to my house and do a DNA sample in my house, because I'm sure there's blood somewhere. And I have about as much connection to this case as that burned out vehicle. So they are literally randomly pulling everything they can possibly think of, all of these, things out of the air to try to come up with new evidence. My thing is, are you actually finding legitimate new evidence, or are you manufacturing new evidence? That is the question. Are you going to be able to prove that that van has anything to do with Laci Peterson? They say if Laci Peterson's blood's in that van, then that proves it. Okay, great. Pick out any random burned out van that has blood in it anywhere in the US, and you could probably say, okay, well, judge, I need you to let me do a DNA test, because they have already proven every which way that you can that those two robbers broke into that house 2 days after Laci disappeared. And they're saying, well, they couldn't have done that because there was cameras out in front of Laci's house. There was news and stuff out there. Well, for one, they weren't out there 24 hours a day. Right. And for two, it was across the street and down the street just a little, kind of catty corner. And they went in the back into the house. They went in, they parked their vehicle, everything was in behind. What better time to rob a place outside of the visual range if everybody's focused right here? Okay, go right over there. I'm sorry. Maybe that's not very nice to say, but that's the perfect time. Because they're not looking over there to see if somebody's robbing their house. They're over here talking about a missing pregnant woman. They don't give a crap what's going on down there.
Yep, now's the time to do it.
So I'm sitting here going, that's actually a perfect time. Perfect cover. They're not going to pay no attention to you over there. And and then you go back to the eyewitness thing. One eyewitness says, well, I think I seen somebody throw a woman into a van. And I'm sitting here going, back to the eyewitness stuff. I'm sitting here going, yeah, because that's really reliable testimony. You think you saw a woman being pushed into a van. Well, this woman had a golden retriever dog with her. That dog was going to kick up a freaking fuss. Some men are going to get bit. They're not going to just throw that woman in the van. Okay.
Exactly.
And so I'm sitting here going, that dog is going to kill those men.
Why didn't
killed by a gun to try to keep from them taking her? And then, like we were talking before, if one dog in the subdivision goes off and goes crazy, every dog in the subdivision goes crazy. Nobody reported the whole universe of dogs exploding at the same time. So I'm sitting here going, how reliable is that? I think I saw a pregnant woman getting pushed into a van. And I'm sitting here going, we don't even know if there was a van involved. But now all of a sudden the van.
Why didn't you call 911 if you saw that?
Yeah, exactly.
Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you yell? Why didn't you call the cops? Why didn't you do something? But see, that's the thing. Marion Tate says, why did it take so long to do DNA on the tape? Absolutely. Why did it take so long? Now, of course, in 2002, you had blood type testing. You didn't have actual full-on DNA. You had blood typing. But see, this is also something else. Let me look it up here real quick. Give me a second. I'm scrolling down through this long.
They
Go ahead.
not only debunked that at the trial, the original trial, didn't it get debunked on several appeals? I mean,
Yes.
more than one time those things were debunked.
He's had several appeals. Okay, let me look here.
And I agree with what Marion says. They could spend that money on better things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, what was I looking for? I just lost. Oh, okay. He did his automatic appeal of his death sentence in July of 2012. They did arguably get them to say the death sentence was probably not the right sentence, so they did change that. But they also said, okay, in 2021, in September 22nd, 2021, California Superior Court judge ruled that Scott would be resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of a parole. Okay. Let's see. On October 22nd, Scott was moved off of San Quentin's death row and transferred to another prison. In November of 2015, he filed a habeas corpus petition. That was dropped and ruled out in October of 2020. So, I mean, you can go down through here. He has gone through every appeal. He's gone through every process. He's gone through all of these things. And what we need to understand is nobody's saying if they had new legitimate evidence that we wouldn't try it again. You know what I mean? But they are not bringing up anything new. Every one of these things, I know, Tammy, you sent me a list of everything, all of the things that Tammy is my list person. She sent me a list of all of the things they say support his innocence and all of the things that they said support his conviction. And every one of those things, I'm looking here, I think seven, you've got numbered 7 things down. Every one of those 7 things were brought up in court the first time.
Yep.
So you can't say that this is not the case. And so we are, now they're trying to push through that there was a mistrial because one of the jurors, misconduct for this or that. They are grasping at straws. And what I want to get through to people is how long is this supposed to go on? How long are we supposed to keep? Because every time he clogs up the justice system, 1, he's hindering legitimate people from getting the justice they need. 2, he's wasting taxpayer dollars. 3, he is spitting in the face of that mother and father who didn't not only lost their daughter, but lost their grandson. How many times are we going to let this man do this? And then what upsets me is someplace like the Innocence Project. What are you doing? If you're using this for publicity, it's not the kind you want. If you're using this to generate funds, shame on you. So to me, I'm going to keep watching this. I'm going to keep, I'll let you know what I find out. But I do not believe under any circumstances this man deserves a brand new trial. He should be life in prison without parole and stay there. Everybody, go ahead and put in your comments. Do you agree with that, or do you think he needs a new trial? Let me know, and then girls, you can go ahead and start saying goodbye.
I agree with you. He doesn't need a new trial.
I don't think so either. Have we said anything that makes you question, Tammy? Have we gone over anything here, or even while you and I were talking, have we said anything that makes you question his guilt sentence?
No, because I found out that all that was debunked. When I first saw the evidence that, was supposedly on his side,
Mm-hmm.
and found out how it was all debunked, then no, then I don't think he needs a new trial.
Victor says, are they trying to get a pardon? I don't think they're trying to get a pardon. They are just trying to get a retrial. They're trying to start over completely because they're saying, oh, well, this is wrong. That's wrong. This is, and they're trying to get a brand new trial to start over from the beginning. I'm like, why? So you can be convicted again. And then we have to go through another 20 years of appeals processes. So you can fight some more and then waste more tax dollars. And I'm sitting here going, they have the right man and he is exactly where he needs to be. And I'm sorry.
And they already debunked the juror bias misconduct.
Right.
That didn't happen.
Right. Well, and see, that's my thing.
They're grabbing at whatever they can.
Are.
And
this is what's upsetting me. He's already had his death sentence overthrown.
He should be happy with that.
Glossop?
Yeah.
Richard Glossop has been literally railroaded and convicted on nothing, and yet he is fighting for his life. And the Innocence Project should be working on him. Shouldn't be working on cases like this. To me, it seems like a very bad publicity stunt, is what it feels like. It doesn't feel like a legitimate thing. And so we'll be watching it. I may be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I will go on camera and apologize saying I'm wrong. I'm not an arrogant jerk that thinks I could never be wrong. I'm just saying in all of the study that I've done in 300 cases that I have written about, some things make sense and some things don't. This makes sense. He did it. He had a reason for it. He had a way to get rid of the body. Everything he did, lined up to this completely. And so he's where he needs to be. He doesn't need a new trial. We need to be spending our time and energy on something more important. That's where I'm at. And it seems like everybody so far in the comments agrees with me. Yeah. Okay. Tammy, what do you have to say before we go?
I think he was tried and found guilty, and he had all his appeals, and nothing's changed. So
absolutely.
I don't think, and where will this ever end? So no, I don't think
that's where I'm at. When is it going to end? When is it going to end? Where are you going to draw the line in stop taking DNA samples? I mean, come get mine, I guess.
Right.
Are they going to go to every house in America and take a DNA sample to see if they can prove that Scott Peterson didn't kill his wife? I'm like, I don't know. I've talked about the case and I've written about the case, and now I've made a video. So that means I must be connected to the case somehow. Might as well go get Nancy Grace's DNA sample too, because she was actually in the courtroom covering the case when this actually went through the first time. So go ahead and get her sample too, because we're getting samples from every random thing they can think of that could possibly be tied to the case. So go ahead and get hers. I'm sure she'll be happy to give it to you. I mean, that's how legitimate it makes no freaking sense. So, all right. Everybody says no new trial in the comments. Okay, guys, I'm out of here. I will talk to you guys next week for another True Crime Tuesday. Tammy, Cricket, you guys want to say bye?
Bye. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Right. I'm going to run the end credits. Make sure and check out Bones Coffee and my affiliate links, because that really helps us make new videos. Thanks, guys.